So I mean, there was McAfee and some other tools. Okay, so to encrypt it, they use their own agent, and they also had a different program for encryption. Okay, so but when OS already had a native encryption, and it would just need to turn on, and there were some other players which just used native encryption itself, but there was an agent to kickstart the encryption and report it back. So MBAM, which was Microsoft Bitlocker administration and management, was a popular tool. Okay, so that is now deprecated, and so you only have options with group policy, SSEM, and Intune. Okay, so why do we all, for people who really don't understand encryption, it is simply to make your hard disk useless if your laptop is stolen and someone removes your hard drive and they connect it to their own computers, which will not work. Okay, so um, and secondly, um, I mean, so okay, so that is a main purpose, and of course you'll have, even if it's connected, even if it's if you have an external hard drive and USB. Okay, so those are all again can be configurable for encryption as soon as you connect it, and even if you go ahead and remove, they you can actually also configure in such a way that only it works on within your organization or only on that particular laptop and not anywhere else. Okay, so we'll just go ahead straight away. Okay, so but anyways, just to understand, you all need to understand only one thing: a TPM has to be present. Okay, so you know how it actually works when it comes to encryption. There is again a public-private key happening. Okay, so every time you power on the machine, you need to unlock using some kind of cryptic credentials, and there are some keys, okay, recovery called as recovery keys, which are stored somewhere. Okay, somewhere meaning the main important thing is in your TPM chip. So TPM is nothing but your trusted platform module, which is your hard drive, which is your silicon chip that is stored in your computer, and there is some place where it stores the keys. Okay, you have many segments within your TPM, and one of it can be used to store your recovery keys. So what happens, because the recovery keys are present in your TPM, and even if you remove your hard drive, it won't work. Okay, so any tampering, it'll kickstart a BitLocker recovery this one uh, prompt. Okay, so that you need to recover your BitLocker with your encryption key. There are two things. One is the recovery key and the encryption key. So recovery key, every recovery key corresponds to one encryption key and the recovery key, and then that is stored the in your AD or wherever you want. Okay, if it's a normal encryption, people are prompted to, if it's a home computer, for example, they're prompted to either store it in the cloud to your Microsoft account or to store it in your USB drive. Even in your case of here, but your administrator skip that. Okay, so that it automatically being stores either in AD or in the AD. Okay, so anyways, I'll share all this. So the only point here I wanted to hope you can see my screen. I am logging in. So where can we actually do the encryption? Okay, so if you look at old customers, I mean, if they already have configured, you'll find that here in the configuration. Okay, so if you actually go to a new policy and then Windows 10 and then settings, templates, and here in this endpoint protection, the policy that you actually see is this. Okay, so you can say BitLocker, and you will see Windows encryption. Okay, so these are all the settings for Windows encryption. Okay, so that is all it. Okay, so If you enable again, a few things gets highlighted, and if you just block, okay. So the way it works is, if you look at it, okay, so this is one of the setting, okay, but mainly Microsoft now recommends, if you want to do Windows encryption, use this option here that you see in the Windows endpoint security. So here in the disk
Uh,
encryption.
Raj, have you started sharing your screen because I can't see any?
Yes, it has been shared.
Oh, okay.
Okay, how about now?
Can see
Oh,
only
sorry.
your desktop page.
Oh, yeah, we can see only desktop. Sorry.
No?
No, only
No.
desktop.
Yeah, now we can see.
Hmm. Okay. Mm, so this is where you actually start, okay? So here in the endpoint security, disk encryption. So create policy, and once you create policy, we have two options, which is Windows and Mac OS. And here we have BitLocker. Okay. So BitLocker and then create. So I say BitLocker, click on next. So you see here, let's just stop by multiple settings. Okay. I'll just minimize all this. So we have all these, observe these, okay? So don't get confused. People always really get confused in these things, and now they have just made it very good to separate it, okay? So first of all, if you really want to uh, do a BitLocker, this is where you start, okay? So if you look at this, we directly, no, okay? So BitLocker, yes, do you require a device encryption? It has to be enabled. And second option is, if you, it'll warn, okay? So if there is already another disk encryption, or if there is an already an encrypted part, and if you're pushing new configurations, or if there is a third party encryption software, so that is when it will prompt you for it, okay? So it allow warning for other disk encryptions, okay? So it says allow admin to disable all UI. So basically we are disabling all of that, okay? So next important thing, allow standard user to encryption. It has to be enabled. So this one and this one are the very key important settings. What will happen by allowing a standard user is, most 99% of the users are standard users. They are not administrators, right? If we start with autopilot or any, I mean, setup. So it has to be enabled, or else it will prompt for encryption. And next, where do you want to store the password recovery key? And here, so on both and or just Azure AD devices. So it's up to you. If you have a simple Azure AD joint devices, here you can use Azure AD, or if it's an hybrid setup, you can actually do a hybrid setup. Okay, so let's use just Azure AD joint devices. Okay, here you have these three options, right? Last three, either the C drive, which is your operating system drive, or non-C drive like D drive, E drive, everything, and then finally removable drives. Okay, so here again, this, if it's a very old version, you can actually do it, or else you can just ignore it. And now straight away to operating system drives. Okay, so we can actually put whatever, if at all we know what are all these settings, right? But if you are working in an organization, they already have standards to do it, okay? But if you're working in a small organization where you are responsible to configure it, you can actually go by the security baselines. Okay, so security baselines is where there is an option in Intune where you can see whatever is recommended for most enterprise organizations. They have actually already a template with all those values. You can either reference them and configure it here, or you can don't want to create a policy. If you don't want to create a policy, you can actually So you can actually, so I was just saying, if you don't want to create a policy, you can actually use these here right away. Or if you don't want to use the security baselines. If you want to use the security baselines, you can actually skip this and just use the security baseline settings for all the configurations, okay? So if you put enable, so this is another simple thing, right? So it's a use space encryption or a full encryption. So if it is 40 GB and out of which you use just 20 GB of operating system, it will only encrypt the 20 GB part of it. The rest, full encryption, is completely your volume, okay? The 40 GB volume will be encrypted. So this is a faster process. This is a slow process, okay? So you can just check with your organization security team, whichever is your fastest way to do it. Okay, so this additional authentication at startup. Okay, so you can either use it or not. You don't have to use it. So if it is a usually what is happening is you require multiple protectors. Okay, so when I say protectors, it's protector is something that protects. Okay, so a protector is, for example, it'll unlock your drive if it requires something. You have to with a protector. So you need to provide that protector. If it's a pin plus TPM, it means that TPM also has to unlock and provide the cryptography keys plus your pin. So your pin will unlock and then it'll use two things to unlock and unencrypt, decrypt your hard drive. So that is your protector. So if you enable it, you can either use the BitLocker compatible TPM. Okay. If you look at this, configure, I'll just for simpler, because I have a virtual machine, so I'll use as much as less configuration as possible. So configure minimum pin as at the beginning. Okay, so you can just put your 6-digit minimum pin. Okay, all this will work very good in a physical laptop. It's a virtual machine, just use very simple configuration. And then yeah, so you can, this is all self-explanatory, right? Standard uses for changing your PIN. Okay, so if you want to use HSDA compliance, okay, so it'll explain you what to do, all that. And then so you can ignore all of these. Okay, so these are just recovery messages if you're doing a simple test. So if you really want to do every test, for every test case, you need to verify something, all of that is this working and all. Okay. Just like any configuration, okay, what is the meaning of that configuration? Okay, so we have to go and read about it. So this is just a message where if you enable it, it'll put your message during the encryption, like, contact, this is your recovery information. You can use your recovery to get the recovery keys when if it's prompted for the BitLocker recovery page. Okay, so now comes the fixed drives. So since we're talking about the fixed drive, you enable it. Okay, so you select it and then you can do full encryption and again enable it and then your recovery passwords. So all of this is say BitLocker recovery, if at all, if let's say if you are all having all of that. Okay, so that is your operating system drive. This is your fixed drive, and then finally for removal. So you don't have anything, okay? So you just have two settings which says control user BitLocker on removable drives, okay? What does it say? This policy setting controls the use of BitLocker and removable data drives. The policy setting is applied when you turn on the BitLocker. When this policy setting is enabled, you can select all of these properties to allow users. Okay, anyways, this is an old message. Okay, so there's the group policy message. Okay, so whatever you see, this information is copied from the group policy itself. Okay, so you can just enable it and then allow disable write access to all of this. If you don't want to do any kind of BitLocker, you can actually disable this. Okay, you don't have to configure anything, just leave it. But in the external drive protection, that is where you cannot encrypt there, but you can actually deny the write access completely if at all you want to do it. Okay, but if you still want to encrypt it, enable it and then start using use the settings. Okay. So we finish this in the BitLocker drive encryption operating system drive use. This is this is disable, and then enable. Sorry, I put as disable, and then recovery key. Okay. So this is the default. This is the default. Okay, so this is the default. You can actually use 256 and all. Yeah, that's fine. People keep on asking questions. Is 256 strong, 128 strong? Actually, both are strong. You can read about it. Okay, it really doesn't make a difference. Yeah, but if you really want a stronger a bit encryption and all, you can actually put this. Okay, be very careful with this. Not all operating systems support. I mean, not all hardware vendors support. Okay, like Toshiba and all, it doesn't support 256. But you have a good modern devices, it will support 128. So I'll assign this to all devices, or you can even put all devices. Okay, and then I will click save. Okay, so that is one important mandatory. Everyone actually does it. Okay, so very uh, common BitLocker policy that you have. Okay, so I think last week we finished one kind of. I mean, we finished antivirus. Okay, so now this is encryption. This is the host firewall where you can actually create a policy, and then this is where we onboarded our Windows devices to your Defender for Endpoint. And this is your attack surface reduction where we created all kinds of policies to block or to minimize the external attacks. So one of the thing, if you look at Windows and you see there are so many settings here. If you say device control, this is where you can actually reduce the attacks with other devices, right? So if you click on next, and you see, so this is where you control your external the removable storages. So if you enable, okay, so if you keep on enabling it, so this will start denying write access to the WPD devices. So likewise, you have all these devices. Okay, so if you, I think we can configure instance IDs. So every USB and every hardware, like Bluetooth cameras, Bluetooth devices have the instance IDs. Okay, so they are captured. If you connect it, they are captured in the hardware configurations system info. Okay, so you can just take those ID and start configure those IDs. So account protection. So what is account protection is we are protecting some accounts, right? So we have three things here. So one is the local admin password solution, Windows Labs, and the other one is the local user group membership. Okay, and account protection, if I click on the first one, see. So I'm not seen after this. I don't know what is this. Okay. So this is what you can see, user skipping. I'm not sure what is. They put this in Windows Hello for Business. Okay. So Windows, okay, earlier it was a separate setting. Now they've just added this in the account protection. Okay, so if you, I mean, there was a separate setting called Windows Hello for Business, and they've just moved that here in this setting in the account protection. So, okay, so since this is another important topic, okay. So everyone, if at all you're facing an interview, they'll talk about BitLocker, they'll talk about Windows Hello for Business. It is completely different from the convenience pin that your commercial laptops has. right? So you will be able to set up your PIN. You will be able to set up uh, your face recognition, everything in your normal laptop as well. Okay, so it's exactly the same. Okay, the only thing is the configurations, the changes that you see is done by a CSP. It's the same settings that you do. Okay, one second, let me just share. So as soon as you put true, so this is your device scope settings, right? So if you enable PIN, okay, so you can just put some encryption, expiration of like, three, I think, yeah, some 730 days or something. And then PIN history, you don't have to, this is all, right, self-explanatory. So last three passwords, you don't have to use it, or last two passwords, you don't have to use it. Put this as, don't put all this lowercase, just maximum PIN length is also, you can just put it as 6-digit PIN. Minimum length, yeah, so you can just put as okay, so maximum is 6, minimum is also, you can 6, you can actually put it. So people will not remember or don't want more than 6-letter PIN for Windows Hello for Business. Okay, so special characters, again, skip all of those things. Okay, and just leave it as it is. You just enable user PIN and again leave everything as it is. Okay, so this again, I will click this to assign. Okay, so all devices. So in yet another protection, so in the we have labs. Okay, so how many you all understand labs, the traditional AD labs, local administrator password solution? Okay, so before that we'll see administrator. Okay, so everyone knows in their computer there is, in their computers they have local users and groups, right? But if someone wants to go to their, go to the desk of someone and they want to take administrative privileges, typical normal Intune environment or an Azure AD joint devices, what do you all do? Okay, so and right now, if it is an administrative user, so either they have a domain administrator, they click right click on something, they run as an administrator, right? So if they're not administrators on their devices, it'll ask you prompt for an administrator. So which administrator? If it's a domain joined devices, it will probably ask any domain administrator, okay, or any administrator. So who is the administrator of the machine? Very basic. Who is the administrator of this machine? A normal user will not be an administrator, right?
Right, Raj.
Okay, so but who is generally a norm administrator on the device?
The local admin.
If it
If
is
not,
domain join, if
okay,
it is domain join, domain admins.
okay. So if it is a domain joined, yes, if it's a domain admins, right? Or else in this users, you'll always see and groups. Within the groups, typically, normally administrators are the users. So this is my local computer, okay? It's a local computer, and every local computer has a
Default
yeah,
administrator,
default
which
administrators, right? So, but we can add here. But how do we manage this particular group? Okay, so this section that you see here through this local administrator group policy. If you see, I will say, um, okay, I don't know what has changed. Let me say local admin manage. Okay, so here I have selected in the administrators, I am adding some user and group, but I also have to select someone. So I can select someone here. Okay, so this is my Entra ID user base. I can either directly go ahead and create it, or I can actually sync from local ID, right? So, but usually assume that we don't have local ID. Okay, so in most cases, every time I talk about it will not be with the local ID. So assume that this is a cloud user again created. So I want this guy who is a recently joined help desk admin to be the local administrator on almost all the computers. So we can add that particular user, click on next, and then click on assignments, and then I will say all users, all devices, and I'll just put it next. Okay, so this person, which he's a user one, right? User one. One second. Okay, so user one should now also be a part of those administrator group. Okay, so you can see, right? So what you can actually modify, create options we have in the local. So as you can see, this is a local user group membership policy. Okay, again, this was all recently added. It's not applicable for older operating systems. Okay, so last 1.5 year and all they have added because understanding all the users admins problems. So now I can go ahead and even add a user in the local users, add a power users. Okay, so remote desktop users, and even delete an existing user. Okay, so I can create a manual and write something, or I can create like this. So I can remove an existing user also, but only one action per one policy. Okay, I cannot really create anything here. Okay, again, I can create here and then add here and then do here. Okay. So in this policy, I just created another user, add another user where it should, this guy should also get add user. Okay, so we'll refresh the policies at once. Okay, so likewise, what else I have? Now I have Windows Labs local admin password solution. So this was last year's Intune most favorite hit or admin's expected solution. Okay. So Windows Labs was being awaited for nearly 5-6 years, okay? Because what was happening earlier, if someone needs to take an administrator control of these devices, right? They used to use Azure AD and in Entra, there is an option called add local administrators for those users. So if my device is joined to Azure AD, so earlier, what used to happen because you are joined to hybrid AD, or if you're, you're joined to the domain controller, any domain administrator can actually run as an administrator and has the authority on the machine. He is to do all those modify registries and then modify some uninstallations, installations of softwares, or any kind of recoveries, whatever troubleshooting he needs to do, he is to do with the administrator privileges of the laptop using a domain administrator. But nowadays devices, for those devices which are never joined to domain and only joined to Entra or Azure AD, there was the option that Microsoft provided here, okay, local administrator settings. I like to use this even today, okay, because it's a very good option where someone can be added as a local administrator. Okay, so you can see registering user in local administrator on device using during the Entra join process. I can select, I can add any user here. Okay, I can add any user as a local administrator. Okay, so you can put as type. I can have some guy. Okay, so maybe user 3. Okay, so I'll put user 2. Okay, so user 2 to be the local administrator of the device every time, whoever is joining their machine. Okay, so whenever he joins the machine or immediately, even if it's not joined. Okay, so the next time after it'll do a refresh. Okay, so but you can do it even later. Okay, so he will always be this guy for every Entra join machine. He can be the local administrator of the device. It doesn't mean that he'll go and be added on the first time. If it's not added, you can just click on any application, run as an admin. Okay, and then when it's prompted, you can add this particular user, and then he'll be the local administrator going forward. Okay, so but it is usually a live check. Okay, so every time um, this particular SSID will be you need to have internet connection for this. So that was one drawback. But again, without internet connection, this will not work, and hence this was required. Okay, so which is your local administrator password, where a user is actually present in the local administrator section. So next, so this is what labs came in. Okay. So earlier there was AD labs. AD labs is nothing but your administrator, I mean the local administrator or your help desk will not know the password. It's always some random digits because that keeps on rotating. You cannot memorize or you cannot remember you don't have to remember a password because that keeps changing every 2 hours. That keeps changing after the password is used for the first time, right? So if you are a local administrator, what they actually do is they will give some kind of a generic accounts, and a password is also random where you cannot see. It will be hash, 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 and you will start using separate tools to just copy it and use the password. And then password after using it after 1 hour or 2 hours, the password will get expired, right? So all that is a part of the traditional labs solution. So they want the same solution even for an cloud-based management where if it is not joined. So the entire labs is now sitting in the Azure AD, okay? So you don't have any connection to on-premise Active Directory at all. So now if I say labs policy, so we'll click on next. So you see, where do I need to back up my password? Okay, I'll back up my password in Azure AD only. So password age, I want to keep it for 30 days. I'll just leave everything as it is. Okay. You see, administrator account name. Okay. So I don't want to configure it. If you keep it, you'll read this. Use the settings to configure the name of the managed local administrator account. If not specified, if you don't specify, the default built-in local administrator account will be located by a well-known SID.